Rachel Zegler was looking at her one big comeback after the Snow White disaster, but instead, she's performing to a theater that's over 70% empty. Let's uncover what happened and subscribe before we expose the new downfall. The mysterious theater. If you didn't know this, you should. You will be very surprised, because a while ago, Rachel Zegler was starring as Eva Peron in the West End revival of Evita at the London Palladium. This was a kind of role that basically defines a career after a series of long downfalls. The London Palladium was a venue where she could reclaim her career. It's a legendary 2,286-seat theater that has hosted icons of the generation. The show itself is a masterpiece that is written by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, which features some of the most powerful songs in musical theater history. No doubt, Rachel Zegler is one of the most talented girls out there, and this was the moment to prove that she was more than a controversial and canceled franchise. She could show critics and authors that she had genuine talent beyond the Disney princess drama. This was supposed to be her comeback. Instead, it became another funeral in what might be the most public career enclosure in recent Bollywood history. Fans who have checked the official ticketing websites were posting screenshots across social media, showing something quite shocking. The entire section of theaters was available for the entire performance through June, July, and August. We are not talking about just a few seats in the back corners, but rows upon rows of empty seats, premium sections that were also crickets. The availability was so widespread that you could essentially walk up and choose whatever seat you wanted. It was like a movie that no one wanted to watch. Some tickets were being offered as low as £25 or roughly $30, which is quite cheap for a West End production of this scale. Premium tickets in London's West End can typically be around £75 to well over £150 for some of the biggest productions. The fact that Evita tickets were being discounted this heavily and not being sold was a huge red flag. Industry insiders and theater fans were also estimating that upwards of 70% of seats were unfilled on all the given nights. This means that Rachel was walking on a huge stage and performing to approximately 600 to 700 people in a venue that was built for her. In 2000, she went on the stage thinking that it would be all sold out and there would be people upon people just cheering for her. But the visual alone must be devastating for her. Looking out to an audience and seeing more empty seats than filled, night after night, and it kept happening. $4 million. But the story gets more suspicious the more we look into it. Before Rachel Zegler's casting was officially announced, there were reports that they had already generated $4 million in advance ticket sales. That figure was promoted heavily everywhere, especially as the press proved that this revival wasn't going to be a flop like before. If $4 million worth of tickets were genuinely sold before Rachel was even attached to the project, why is it that there were sections and sections of seats that were available for people to buy? Reddit threads and Twitter discussions are also questioning whether that $4 million figure was ever real, or whether it was just a PR stunt for her to boost her credibility and show the world that she is not done yet. The logic is something like this. If the show was already such a hot ticket that it generated millions in pre-sales, why would there be this much availability now? The tickets should have been sold out, especially because only just shy of 2,000 seats were available. The most likely explanation is that $4 million was just exaggerated or included group sales, corporate bookings, and other arrangements that don't really translate to field seats. It is one of the most common practices in theater marketing to announce impressive sound sales so that more people will come. When fans can simply check availability themselves, those marketing tactics backfire, and most of the fans weren't happy with this reportedly fake figure as well. Exposing. The difference between Rachel Snow White's failure and the Evita struggle is that the theater doesn't allow for the same illusions that film does. When Snow White was released, Disney was the one to control the narrative through their strategic marketing, and even if they lost hundreds of millions of dollars, they still did a lot of damage control, which made things a little bit better. They could buy out opening weekends and cleanings to inflate numbers, and even coordinate social media campaigns. and they could clearly retrieve verdict statements about their global box office performance that obscured the fact that the film was a financial disaster. With the theater, it is brutally honest. You either have an audience or you don't. You can't just put people into seats, and you can't edit audiences' actions in post-production because you're just not that big. You cannot release the director's cut that magically makes the show more popular. When the house lights go down and the curtains are drawn, everyone in the building knows how many people showed up, including the performer on the stage. Rachel got the reality check firsthand, and every single night she walked onto the stage and saw the physical evidence of the audience rejection. There was no amount of positive press coverage or supportive social media posts that could change the fact that people were choosing not to spend their money to see her performance. This is the difference between manufactured success and a genuine connection. A film studio can create a narrative based on its agenda, but when we talk about theaters, they can't just force people to buy more tickets to see someone perform live. This requires something deeper, a connection that is only built through trust and genuine effort. But why did it actually happen? And how did she break down Liv in front of an audience? Series of controversy. No matter how much time passes, Rachel Zegler's controversial approach to Snow White continues to define the public perception of her and the type of person she is. It is not just that the movie failed financially, but it is how she talked about it, how she promoted it, and how she refused to back down from her controversial statements, proving in ways that everything was impossible to prepare for. During the promotional campaign, Rachel even made many statements that destroyed the movie's reputation. For most viewers who grew up watching Snow White, this was a disaster. She even talked about other things like the Israel-Palestine war, even though it wasn't directly related to the movie, but she kept putting the narrative during her promotional run. She is the example of Hollywood's most persistent failure, and to understand that, we must look at her past failures. Studios invested heavily in Rachel after West Side Story, treating her like the next big thing, even though the film was underperforming at the box office. She was cast as Snow White, appeared in Shazam, and landed the lead in The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. On paper, this looks like a huge rise, but in reality, every single movie flopped. None of her films have been genuine hits driven by her star power. The Hunger Games prequel succeeded because of franchise recognition, not because audiences were excited to see Rachel specifically. Shazam 2 also bounced back, earning only $133 million worldwide against a $125 million budget. West Side was also a complete flop and couldn't find the audience.
White's up there, and I cried my eyes out.
What was it like seeing yourself for the first time in full Snow White drag?
The pattern was clear. People weren't showing up for Rachel Zegler. They were showing up for franchises and stories, and while tolerating her presence at best. This wasn't about talent, because Rachel can sing. That's undeniable. She can act amazingly, and her talent is there. But Hollywood was never purely about talent. It was about charisma, connection, and your statements, as everything heavily mattered. Think about actual stars, who are stars who earned their status organically. We had Jennifer Lawrence, who became a huge actress because audiences generally connected with her personality and performance. Chris Hemsworth and other actors like Tom Cruise or Kanye West, even though they were quite controversial, still found a massive following throughout their undeniable talent and being authentic personalities. Rachel was added major rules before she would build the foundation, and the studio tried to skip the earning it phase and jump straight to the star section, but the audience rejected that premise. And now we are seeing the consequences. Social media reaction. One of the fans even met Rachel Zegler in New York, and she had trusting opinions on her. In one specific interview, a user on Instagram talked about Rachel Zegler in a positive light. But if you look at most of the opinions on her, it's largely negative. One of the strangest aspects of Rachel's situation is the disconnect between her social media presence and the actual commercial performance. If you go to TikTok or Twitter, you will find plenty of supportive content about Rachel, clips for her own Met Gala appearances, and even the London Palladium show that she did. People were happy about the audience, and she was getting positive comments. Most of all, fans even defended her against criticism, and there is a narrative in online spaces that she is being unfairly targeted by the haters and trolls. Here's the problem. Social media support doesn't really translate to ticket sales. Someone can post a positive comment on TikTok without spending a dime, and they can defend Rachel Zegler as much as they want in most of the Twitter arguments while having zero intentions of ever seeing her performances. The proof is the theater seats that were still empty. If all the social media support was genuine, or if all those defenders actually cared about her so much, why didn't they attend the London show instead? The theater was hugely empty, even though some days were good. The supportive social media posts meant nothing when they were not backed by actual attendance. This isn't unique to Rachel. This services the 17-2. It's a huge issue in entertainment, where online discourse has become more performative rather than being genuine. People will defend or attack celebrities as a form of social signaling without having any real investment being made. Rachel is discovering that all the support online and on TikTok doesn't really pay the bills, and only actual audience turnout matters the most, which she doesn't have. Here is the thing. The people who championed her first, including Steven Spielberg, who directed her in West Side Story and even suggested her for the Snow White film, have gone quite silent since her films started falling out. There are no interviews defending the casting decision, no public support during the controversy. Just finally, this is how Hollywood typically handles mistakes. They just take a quiet retreat without any admission, and the executives who make bad calls don't usually issue public apologies or acknowledge their action. They just stop supporting the person that they championed and hope everyone forgets that they were even involved. This strategy only works if the audience says, "Move on." And in Rachel's case, to him, every new project becomes a huge disaster. The problem for the executives is that admitting they were wrong about Rachel means admitting they wasted millions of dollars and, along with their reputation. Do you think all this pressure is too much for Rachel Zegler, or do you think it's justified? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and ring the bell icon for more.